But yeah, so in this division, Wisconsin was my clear pick. It's just they're such a proven product. They seem to grow as a team after that fourth game. They once they found Braylon Allen at running back and Graham Mertz started taking care of the ball, they rounded into a solid offense, and they are just the proven product of the West. They have the formula down. From there, it was wide open for second. We'll get into it, but I mean, you can make the case for the next four listed on that graphic there: Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, Purdue.
Yeah, so here's the graphic. Wisconsin number 1. So we're looking at the Big Ten West now. Wisconsin number 1, Nebraska number 2, Iowa and Minnesota tied for 3, Purdue 5th, Illinois 6th, Northwestern, who Nebraska kicks the season off against an Ireland later this month at 7th. And as you said, Brett, basically from 2 to 5, from Nebraska to Purdue there, you said it's a pretty close group of 4. How far of a drop-off are those 4, do you think, from Wisconsin? Is it a big drop-off, or is it a fairly small one?
I think it's pretty sizable. Now, I mean, I guess you could just say that it's wide open for all 5 of them to win the league. If a couple of things go wrong for Wisconsin, if they come out like they were in September, that team's not winning a conference or a division. So I just kind of am going off some history there with Wisconsin. I really like how their run game evolved finally, like the team we used to always know from Wisconsin. That you saw that against Nebraska, I believe, another 200-yard output. The defense does lose a lot of starters to the pros, but he's got Jim Leonard, has a great track record, just as much as Phil Parker in this division in building defenses. So, yeah, they're a proven product. I know I keep saying it, but it's true. Then from there, Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, Purdue. Some other preseason preview magazines out there, they rely too heavily on the tie. You see like half the conference is tied. I'm not a big fan of that. I'd try and make a claim and stick to it. But in a case where it's a 4-team logjam, I had to side with a 2-team tie there in the middle. So I basically said, which team has the highest ceiling out of the 4? I'd say Nebraska. Which one has the most likely floor? That'd be Purdue. And then tie the 2 in the middle with Iowa, Minnesota. But we can dig any of those teams there. But it's a crowded division, and also a division that doesn't get enough credit nationally. I see it ragged on day in and day out on Twitter. It's just laughable. I mean, these are solid, strong programs. You see it in every Outback Bowl and Florida Bowl where, the SEC team is favored by 2 touchdowns, and then in Iowa goes and smokes them. So, I don't know. Just a little plug there for the Big Ten West. I think it's underrespected.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Honky. I was just going to say that you were saying if Wisconsin comes out like they did last September, and then they've got problems. But I'm looking at their schedule right now. And it goes Illinois State, which is an FCS school, Washington State, New Mexico State. Then they play Ohio State this in week 4, and then Illinois and Northwestern. So, I mean, realistically speaking, Wisconsin could come out of the gates with 5-0 or 5-1, 6-0 if they can play Ohio State well or whatever, which I actually don't think that they will beat Ohio State. But I mean, that's and then they play Michigan State and Purdue. I mean, and so realistically looking at it, I can understand why you have Wisconsin and you say that there's that separation, because they kind of have, I don't want to say it's an easy schedule because it's the Big Ten and they could always drop, 1 or 2 of those games. But overall, looking at it, it doesn't seem like they have the toughest beginning of the schedule.
Yeah, and to put it numerically, they had the largest in-season improvement. So when you look at the first half, the first 6 games versus the last 7, they had the biggest jump, the biggest improvement in season in my game grader formula. And you saw that. I mean, they opened 1-3, their worst start in like 20 years or something, and then they closed strong and closed looking like the Wisconsin we know. So I think they're back. They call themselves the grit factory on defense, and great coordinator, one of the best in the game with Leonard.
Yeah. Was that where Paul Chryst, did he take the reins back over on offense like in season, mid-season last year?
I believe so. I know they have a new play caller coming in, Bobby Ingram, the former receiver. So trying to, and it's crazy to think of Wisconsin in this sense, but trying to modernize the passing game. That's the language we hear out of them. It's probably coach speak, but still have an NFL vet calling the plays is interesting.
We know a little something about that over here in Nebraska. So yeah.
Well, when talking about the schedule 2, and I see number 2, you have Nebraska 3 tied for 3, but the top end of it, Iowa. When you think just purely schedule, Iowa this year plays Ohio State and Michigan, so the top 2 teams in the East. Nebraska plays, as we said earlier, Indiana and Rutgers, the bottom 2. So obviously schedules get brought into when we start talking about rankings and where teams go into. And so Nebraska, again, whether some Husker fans, depending on what the Husker fan is, there's going to be the optimist one that's going to love seeing this, or even say, "Hey, we should be first," right? And then there's going to be the realist one that's going to sit there and say, "How in the world can you have Nebraska second in the West?" But the reality is that just solely off of schedule alone, Nebraska, as you mentioned earlier, we finally get that benefit, at least on paper, going into the season. I never want to say a team's, who knows, this could be the year Rutgers is great for some reason. Last year, I think Michigan State, coming into the season, Michigan State was ranked very low in the East, and they were going to be, a favorable game for us to play, and then they turned out being ranked by the time we played them. But on paper, right now at least, we look like we have a favorable schedule.
Yeah, I agree. That was one of the factors when you look at it. Missing Ohio State's huge, and yeah. So I mean, and even like to some of the more pessimistic out there for Nebraska fans, think of how close they were against some of these teams that you're saying should be above them. I mean, Iowa, you led 21-6, and you go from there. It was a punt block touchdown, a safety, a lot of junk. You would have won that game, and that seems to be the script with Iowa the last couple of years. I mean, Nebraska plays them really well. They played Wisconsin really well too. I'd say that under Frost they played Wisconsin better than they did under Pelini, which is hard to believe given the win-loss record overall. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to get into the Nebraska pick, but I guess looking at Iowa, I feel like we know what we have with Iowa. It's kind of the same story year in and year out, and what you have is a proven, fundamentally sound defense. They force turnovers more than anybody, and they keep Iowa in every game. You have special teams that continue to flip the field. That's a strength. But then holding the program back from a higher ceiling is the offense, specifically the quarterback position. And in this transfer portal era, it's hard to believe this is the third straight year of the same quarterback battle between Petras and Padilla. Yet here we are. And when you look at Spencer Petras, when the play breaks down and when he's pressured or when the first read is covered, he becomes statistically the worst in the conference. And that's going to hold them back. They also lose Tyler Lindenbaum, their ace, their anchor in the middle at center. So, we know what we have with Iowa, and I think that Nebraska has a more variable outcome and a more higher ceiling potentially.
How about Minnesota here? Obviously, they lost a lot on the offensive line, but they have kind of also built a little bit of a pipeline there where they just go and replace it. Where are we at with Minnesota heading into the season with PJ Fleck?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I had a chance to interview PJ Fleck. It was a very interesting discussion. I got to respect how unique he is, and he owns it. He admits that, hey, my personality, my style, it isn't for everybody. And but for the 85 guys that we do sign and eventually commit to play, it works for them. And it's hard to prove it otherwise. The win-loss record, the way that they surged in 2019, and again last year, even through some injuries, churned out a 9-win season. So my hat's off to him. What you have with Minnesota last year, they were so run heavy. It was the 3 service academies and them in terms of fewest passes attempted. So what they're doing, they're shifting their offense around. They're bringing Kurt Sriracha back, who was actually the coordinator on that 19 team. Bringing him back, it's going to open up the offense a bit more. You still have Tanner Morgan. You still have an All-American Mo Ibrahim at running back and Chris Altman-Bell at receiver. But you're right. It's the line is going through a transition. Can they replace 4 starters? We'll see. That's a big question mark, as well as their defensive line, a question mark. But it's a strong enough program the last couple of years that they have some staying power, to keep them in the middle tier at least.
I was reading an article tonight in the Omaha World Herald, and it was Sam McEwen. He ranked the toughest games that Nebraska is going to play this year. And number 2 on the season he had was Purdue, and we play them at Purdue, so that can factor in, obviously, where we're playing the game at. That's who you have number 5 here. Purdue, we did we're going to get to this when we get to the Nebraska part. We did our polls that we do, our annual preseason game-by-game poll, and Purdue was one that it was closer than most by Nebraska fans. So there's some respect there, or there's some thoughts that the Boilermakers, that can be a dangerous game for Nebraska out there in West Lafayette.
Yeah, well, I think Nebraska fans are sick of seeing David Bell and Rondale Moore run all over them. I mean, this is an aerial assault, and it's a proven product under Jeff Brom. And I have a lot of respect for them. I have them in my top 40. I think that they could scare anybody on any given Saturday. But I think specifically to this upcoming year, they lose a lot of their star players. I mean, George Karlaftis, All-American defensive end, he's gone. Alexander, their do-it-all linebacker, he's also gone. He led the team in tackles a couple years in a row. So star power gone on defense. And then on offense, the receiver core got hit pretty hard. David Bell was an All-American as well. Even their second guy, I think Milton Wright, was suspended for the year. And Jackson Anthrop, I believe his name is. He was a 6-year guy. So their top 3 receivers are gone, and the run game was non-existent. And that's by design. I actually talked to Jeff Brom. He says, well, why would I start running the ball? I mean, why would I change what works? They're throwing the ball 50 times a game. It's working. Players love playing in that offense too. He specifically said he's won recruits because of that style. But all that to say, I'm getting off track here. But it's a great passing attack. That's proven. But there's no run game to complement it, and the defense loses its 2-star players.
I secretly think that Brett has a crush on Purdue. I mean, like, he won't say it. He's very like analytical about it all and everything. But man, there was like kind of like a little like, I could see the stars in your voice.
I'll tell you, I do love their helmets. I'll put it that way. I love those train track alternates, man. It doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, I part of the Redcast road trip I took over the summer. My family loves me. I drive them hours out of the way to go see football stadiums, and we made it up to West Lafayette. That's the last Big Ten stadium I had not seen yet, and made it out there, walked around in there, and they've got the train tracks that come right up to the field where the team walks out on the field like on train tracks, or painted on the ground. There's things about college football like that I just love. I love little traditions like that each place has. Number 6 you had was Illinois, the team that we started off the season last year against. We really needed a win, and didn't start the season off well against Illinois. Brett Bielema going into season 2. What do you see out of the Illini?
Well, I finally moved Illinois out of last place. That was a team that you could usually pencil in for last place in the West. But there's a lot to like from them. A power run game that's kind of fitting for Brett Bielema, given his history, his schemes in the past. They ran all over Penn State. I think they ran for 300-something yards and won that 9-overtime crazy game. But, there's a lot to like there. Big offensive line, good run game. They bring in a Power 5 transfer, Tommy DeVito, who used to start at Syracuse. So that helps there a little bit at quarterback. And the defense really surged. From the first 4, looking at September and August compared to the back half of the year, they surged on defense. We'll see if they can continue that. Not enough to contend in this middle tier I was talking about. There's a sizable gap from Purdue down to Illinois, but I'd still put them above Northwestern.
And that brings up number 7. And this is for Redcasters are interested to hear this too. This is the team that we're going to be kicking off the season against in Ireland at the end of the month, 3 weeks and 3 days from today, as Rob started off the show with. Northwestern, they're preseason number 7, and but they are an up and down program, it seems like, from year to year. One year they go 3-9, the next year they go 9-3, right? And I guess the optimistic Husker looks at this and says, hey, that's a game that we can definitely win. We beat them 56-7 last year. We're more talented than them, blah blah, yada yada, all that stuff. And then the pessimist looks at it and goes, geez, I Northwestern can just as soon go out and go 9-3 this year. This could be their turnaround year. You have them ranked 7th. I'm envisioning that you're not thinking they're a 9-3 or 8-4 kind of team this year. So what are we looking at with the Wildcats?
Right. A ton of respect for Coach Fitzgerald. But yeah, it's been first place to worst, then back to first, then back to worst. I don't see that roller coaster continuing. The difference being that 2019 team that went 3-9, they were close in a lot of games. They battled hard, had some injuries, and you could kind of see an improvement. Now, I didn't forecast a division title, but you could see a return to bowl season. I don't see that this time around. This team was blown out almost every week. One of the worst in game graders, 62nd out of 66. Really not many points. I mean, if you have the book open, or if you're following online there, on my stat boxes, you can see red is bad. Bottom 10, bottom 40, that's dark red and light red. It's all red on their page. It was a bad year, and I don't really see an overnight fix. They lost their coordinator, 50-year coaching vet, Hankwitz. He's gone. Quarterback has been a revolving door ever since Peyton Ramsey. Really just nothing notable that I see changing this. So I had them in last.
Is there anything to the, their defense took a huge step back last year, as you mentioned, that the coordinator was gone. And that is something that there are certain programs in Iowa and Wisconsin and Northwestern that would have a lot of stability. Nebraska has been, hiring and firing coaches, it seems like, over the last decade, and that hasn't helped us. Northwestern loses a defensive coordinator. They struggled the year after that on that defense side of the ball. Do you see them making, is there an improvement you think that they're going to make in year 2 of the new defensive coordinator? Or is this as much a talent issue as anything? Or, can you envision some kind of improvement that we're going to see, because Nebraska fans are basing this off of last year. Hey, we beat them 56-7. Are we going to beat them 56-7 again?
Well, I like him minus 9.5. That's for sure.
Okay.
When I saw the games of the year come out, the lines, the really early lines, that's one that I hope people locked in, the Nebraska minus 9.5. I think it's already up to 13.5, maybe even 14. It's surging for Nebraska. I hope you got in on that early. That was that was a good one. But no, I don't really see an overnight fix. They're not going to bounce back to the top of the Big Ten like they were in 2020. I think what was special about Coach Hankwitz was that they were excellent in the money downs and the money situations, red zone, fourth downs, third downs, stuff like that, staying ahead of the chains. All that went away last year. And I saw rumors, too, they're trying to switch up the scheme late in the game, late in the offseason, going from 4-man to 3-man. It just sounds like a mess. I'd stay away from Northwestern.